You need to call me back, Cassie. It's important, really important. Sadie's voice, tight with something I couldn't quite place, crackled through my phone's speaker. I deleted the voicemail without listening to the rest. My cousin always had some drama brewing, and honestly, I was too bone-tired to care. My name is Cassandra Wilkinson, and at 28, I'd spent the last 7 years of my life in a perpetual state of exhaustion. Most people my age were building careers, traveling, or just enjoying their 20s. Me? I was a ghost, a quiet, invisible force, working 2 jobs to keep a roof over my family's heads. My main gig was hotel cleaning, where I often worked alongside Hamza Blake, my boss, a man of 38 who saw more of my tired mornings than my own family did. Then there was my side hustle, an online graphic design business I ran in the dead of night. Every single dollar, after bare necessities, went into one place: the towering mortgage on my grandmother Matthew Rogers's house. She was 60 now, frail, and the house had been in her name, but the debt was a family burden that no one else seemed to shoulder. I'd learned to swallow the harsh words and cold shoulders from my Aunt Ivy Reynolds, 53, and Sadie, 25. Ivy, the self-appointed matriarch, had a way of looking through me while Sadie's jealousy manifested in constant, subtle digs. Cassandra, still sleeping in? Or, must be nice to have so much free time, they'd say, usually when I was dragging myself out of bed after a 14-hour day. They called me lazy, manipulative, a freeloader. The irony was a bitter pill. The only thing that kept me going was the occasional letter from my older sister, Julia Tran, 31, who'd wisely moved hundreds of miles away years ago, escaping this very dynamic. Her letters were brief, sometimes just a postcard, but they were a lifeline, a reminder that someone out there knew I existed beyond these 4 walls. This morning, though, was different. My fingers trembled as I clicked confirm on the bank's online portal. The final payment, 7 years, done. I leaned back, a strange mix of relief and emptiness washing over me. Just then, I heard Ivy's voice from the kitchen, sharp and clear. "Cassandra, are you going to sleep all day? There are chores to be done. Honestly, some people just don't contribute." I closed my laptop, the screen reflecting my tired, triumphant face. The weight of the house was off my shoulders, but the weight of their words still pressed down. Sadie's voicemail, a forgotten echo, suddenly felt less like drama and more like a prelude. The air in the house felt thick that evening, heavy with unspoken tension. I'd spent the afternoon trying to shake off the morning's exhaustion, but Ivy's casual dismissal of my contributions still stung. Now, gathered around the dining table for what was supposed to be a regular Sunday dinner, the usual clatter of forks and low murmurs felt amplified. Uncle Gilbert, 56, sat quietly, picking at his food, as always letting Ivy take the lead. Cody, my younger brother, 23, looked uncomfortable, glancing between me and Sadie. Sadie, 25, was in full performance mode. She'd been unusually cheerful all day, a red flag I should have recognized. She started innocently enough, talking about Matthew, our grandmother, 60, and her recent doctor's visit. Then her voice dropped, laced with false concern. "It's just, Grandma Matthew mentioned something peculiar the other day," Sadie began, looking directly at me. "About some missing money from her savings account. Nothing huge, but enough to make her worry." My fork clattered against my plate. "What are you talking about, Sadie?" I asked, my stomach clenching. I handled all of Matthew's bills, ensuring everything was paid on time, always with her knowledge. "Well," Sadie continued, leaning forward, "she said she'd asked you about it, Cassandra, and you just brushed her off. And then I heard from a friend at the bank that someone had been making some rather unusual withdrawals from Grandma's account. Cash withdrawals, and you're the only one who has access to her cards, aren't you?" I was blindsided. "That's a lie. I've never taken a cent from Grandma Matthew. Every transaction is documented, and she approves everything." Ivy, 53, slammed her hand on the table. Don't you dare raise your voice, Cassandra. Sadie is just expressing a valid concern. Your grandmother is old and frail, and you're always so secretive with her finances. She turned to me, her eyes narrowed. Where is this money, Cassandra? Did you think no one would notice? There is no missing money, I shouted, my voice cracking with a mix of fury and disbelief. I've been paying the mortgage, remember? I've been working 2 jobs to keep this house afloat, while you two sit here and accuse me. Cody tried to interject. Wait, Mom, maybe there's a misunderstanding. Silence, Cody, Ivy snapped, cutting him off instantly. He shrank back into his chair. This is about Matthew's money, not your sister's supposed contributions that we never see proof of. The injustice was a physical blow. My vision blurred with tears of rage. I pushed back my chair, scraping it loudly across the floor. You want proof? Fine. You can search this house from top to bottom. You won't find anything because there's nothing to find. I stormed out of the dining room and retreated to the only place I considered mine, my small bedroom. I locked the door, my heart pounding, frantic. Minutes later, the lock rattled violently. Cassandra, open this door right now. Ivy's voice was cold, menacing. The rattling intensified, then stopped. I heard a key scrape, then the click of the lock. Ivy had a spare. The door burst open. Ivy stood there, her face a mask of righteous fury, and without a word, she started tearing through my drawers, tossing clothes, books, and papers onto the floor. Where is it, Cassandra? Where's Matthew's money? Ivy's ransacking of my room was just the beginning. The next morning, I was subjected to what felt like a public trial in our living room. Ivy, 53, sat on the armchair like a judge. Sadie, 25, perched beside her smirking. Uncle Gilbert, 56, stood awkwardly by the fireplace, avoiding eye contact. Even Matthew, 60, was there, looking confused and frail, a silent prop in their charade. We found nothing, of course, Ivy announced, her voice dripping with false disappointment. Which only proves how cunning you are, Cassandra, hiding the money so well. There was never any money to hide, I pleaded, my voice hoarse from crying all night. I told you, I've been paying the mortgage. Every cent I earned after bills went to this house. Why would I steal from Grandma Matthew? Sadie scoffed. Because you're greedy, Cassandra. You always have been. You probably thought you could get away with it, with Grandma being so old. That's enough, I yelled, standing up. I've sacrificed everything for this family, for this house, and this is how you repay me? By accusing me of theft? Ivy rose slowly, her eyes cold and hard. We don't need a thief under our roof, Cassandra, especially not one who preys on her own grandmother. Pack your bags. You're out. My jaw dropped. Out? This is my home. I've paid for this home. It's Matthew's home, and she's too unwell to deal with your lies, Ivy countered, her voice unwavering. And as for paying, we've never seen a single receipt from you. Just your constant complaints about working. Now leave. Uncle Gilbert finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. Ivy, maybe we should just talk this through. No, Gilbert, Ivy cut him off sharply. My decision is final. I felt a sickening lurch in my stomach. Betrayed, abandoned. I stumbled back to my room, grabbed the duffel bag I'd packed in a fit of despair last night, and threw in a few essentials. When I came back to the living room, Ivy snatched the bag from my hand and marched to the front door, flinging it onto the porch. Don't come back until you're ready to confess and return Matthew's money, she declared, her voice echoing in the sudden silence. I stood there numb, then walked out, leaving the door ajar. As I stepped onto the porch, I glanced back. Cody, 23, stood at the living room window, his face a mixture of guilt and helplessness. He gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod, then quickly looked away as Ivy's shadow fell over him. I pulled out my phone, my fingers fumbling. I needed Julia, 31. I called her, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again and again. Nothing. The silence from my sister, usually a source of comfort, now felt like another layer of abandonment. Sitting on the curb, my duffel bag beside me, I pulled out my phone again. Not to call Julia, but the bank. I needed to confirm everything to make sure I wasn't completely insane. "I'm calling about the mortgage on the Reynolds residence," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I just want to confirm the final payment has been processed." The agent's voice was polite. "Yes, Ms. Wilkinson. The final payment was received yesterday. Everything is clear. And just to confirm, you are the only listed payee on this account, correct? We'll need to speak with you directly regarding the deed transfer." My breath hitched. The only listed payee. A cold, hard knot of resolve began to form in my chest. Hamza, my boss from the hotel cleaning job, was a lifesaver. He lived alone in a small apartment a few towns over, and when I called him, heartbroken and homeless, he didn't hesitate. "Come on over, Cassie. You can crash on my couch for a bit. No questions asked," he'd said, his voice calm and steady. He was 38, a decade older than me, and had always been a quiet, observant presence in my life. I knew he'd seen the toll my family took on me over the years, though I rarely spoke about it. It had been 3 weeks since I'd been kicked out. 3 weeks of sleeping on Hamza's comfortable but unfamiliar couch, 3 weeks of silence from Julia, and 3 weeks of working my 2 jobs, now with an added layer of bitterness. Hamza would bring me tea in the mornings and listen without judgment as I recounted the injustice. He was a good man, a truly unexpected ally. "So you're saying you've been paying for this house for 7 years, and they threw you out for stealing money that doesn't even exist?" Hamza asked one evening, stirring his coffee. "Exactly," I said, staring into my mug. "And the bank confirmed I'm the only one listed on the mortgage payments, the only one they'd talked to about the deed transfer." "That's significant, Cassie," he said slowly. "You know what that means, right?" I nodded, a cold resolve settling in my chest. "It means the house is technically mine, or will be once the deed officially transfers." The thought of revealing the truth, of marching back in and throwing it in their faces, had been a constant battle in my mind. Part of me wanted to scream it from the rooftops, to expose their hypocrisy. But another part, the part that had been quietly working and sacrificing for so long, wanted to wait, to make it count. "Don't rush it," Hamza advised, as if reading my thoughts. "Let the paperwork do its job, and in the meantime, document everything. Every payment, every insult, every contact. You'll need it." His words resonated. My pain, fresh and raw, began to harden into something sharper, more controlled. I started gathering every bank statement, every transfer confirmation, every text message and email that hinted at their dismissiveness. I even found old letters from Julia, where she'd occasionally mention my financial struggles, providing a paper trail of my sacrifices. The idea of revenge, once a fleeting thought, now felt like a concrete plan, slowly solidifying in my mind. One morning, a thick official-looking envelope arrived at Hamza's apartment, addressed to me. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was from the bank. I tore it open, my hands shaking. Inside, a single sheet of paper, stark and formal. It stated in no uncertain terms that as of this date, the property located at the Reynolds residence was officially transferred into the sole ownership of Cassandra Wilkinson. I was the deed holder. The official letter confirming my sole ownership of the house felt like a physical weight in my hands, a heavy, satisfying weight. I kept it tucked away, a secret weapon. In the weeks that followed, I started noticing subtle shifts in the family's behavior. Ivy, 53, suddenly started calling me, not to apologize, of course, but her voicemails were laced with an unusual urgency. "Cassandra, we need to talk about the house. There are some issues with the mail." Or, "The bank keeps sending strange letters. Pick up your phone." I ignored every single one. Uncle Gilbert, 56, even called once, sounding flustered. "Cassandra, have you heard anything from the bank? They're asking about Matthew's mortgage. It's all very confusing. I simply told him I was no longer involved in the family finances, a cold, hard truth that felt good to say. I knew they were panicking. The bank wouldn't be sending them anything about the mortgage because they weren't on it. They were probably getting letters addressed to Matthew, 60, or perhaps even generic notices about property ownership changes, which would be enough to cause alarm for Ivy. My sister Julia, 31, was the next hurdle. I knew I needed her on my side, or at least to understand. I called her, and this time she picked up. "Cassie, what's going on? Mom and Sadie have been blowing up my phone with some wild story about you stealing from Grandma Matthew." Her voice was weary, already tired of the family drama. "They kicked me out, Julia," I told her, my voice flat. "They accused me of embezzling from Matthew, and Ivy threw my bags onto the porch." There was a long silence. "Cassie, I don't know what to believe anymore. You know how Mom and Sadie are, but Grandma Matthew's money? That's serious." "I didn't take anything, Julia. I've been paying the mortgage for 7 years, every single payment, and now the house is mine. The deed is in my name." Another silence, heavier this time. "Cassie, I want to believe you, I really do. But that's a huge claim. You know how many times they've spun stories and how many times you've been caught in them. I need proof. Ralgero." Her skepticism stung, but I understood it. Julia had seen enough family lies to be jaded. "You'll get it," I promised. "Soon." Her lack of immediate belief, though painful, only strengthened my resolve. I wouldn't just tell them, I would show them. I called the bank and requested an official notarized copy of the deed with my name clearly listed as the sole owner. It would arrive in a few days. Then a few days later, while checking my email for updates on the deed, I stumbled upon something unexpected. A forwarded email from the bank, clearly misdirected to my old email address, which I still had access to. It was a refusal letter. Sadie, 25, had secretly tried to solicit a loan from the bank, using the house as collateral. The reason for refusal was stark. "Ms. Reynolds, you are not listed as an owner or co-owner of the property, nor are you a listed party on the existing mortgage, therefore we cannot process your loan application." Sadie had been trying to use my house to get her money. The cold knot in my chest tightened, hardening into steel. This wasn't just about proving my innocence anymore. This was about justice. The invitation came from Cody, 23. "Mom and Uncle Gilbert want to talk, Cassie. Really talk. They said they want to apologize." His voice sounded genuinely hopeful, a stark contrast to the fear I'd seen in his eyes weeks ago. Uncle Gilbert, 56, even called, his tone unusually firm for him. "It's time we cleared the air, Cassandra. Please, just come for dinner." I knew what this was. Not a genuine apology, but a desperate attempt to regain control, to figure out what was happening with the house. But I agreed. The notarized deed, crisp and official, was tucked securely in my bag. Walking back into that house, the same house I'd been thrown out of, felt surreal. The air was thick with a false pleasantness. Ivy, 53, greeted me with a tight smile. Sadie, 25, with an overly sweet one. Matthew, 60, was sitting quietly in her usual armchair, looking as frail as ever. Julia, 31, was there too, having driven down, her expression unreadable. Dinner was a tense affair, filled with forced small talk. Then Ivy cleared her throat. "Cassandra," she began, her voice carefully modulated, "we've had some time to reflect, and we realize we might have been a bit hasty." Sadie chimed in, "Yes, Cassie, we're sorry if we jumped to conclusions about Matthew's money. It was a misunderstanding." Her eyes, however, were cold, calculating. My stomach churned. This wasn't an apology. This was a preamble. "We just want what's best for the family," Ivy continued, her gaze sweeping over everyone, landing on me. "And with all these confusing letters from the bank, it's clear things need to be put back in order. So, we'd like you to do the right thing, Cassandra. Sign the house back over for the family." "Oh, My heart, which had been beating a nervous rhythm, suddenly stilled. This was it. I reached into my bag, my fingers brushing against the cool, smooth paper of the deed. I pulled it out, unfolded it slowly, and laid it flat on the dining table. The official seals in bold print stood out starkly against the polished wood. "You want me to do the right thing?" I asked, my voice calm, almost a whisper, but it cut through the room's manufactured peace. My eyes met Ivy's, then Sadie's. "I have been doing the right thing for 7 years." Ivy's eyes widened, her gaze fixed on the document. Sadie leaned forward, her smile faltering. "This," I said, tapping the paper with a steady finger, "is the official deed for this house. And as you can see," I pointed to my name, bold and clear, "it's in my name, Cassandra Wilkinson, sole owner." Silence descended, heavy and absolute. Ivy's face drained of color. Sadie gasped, a sharp, choked sound. Gilbert looked from the deed to Ivy, then back to me, his mouth slightly open. I looked around the table, at their stunned, horrified faces. "So," I asked, my voice rising slightly, a chilling edge to it, "who should I evict first?" Ivy clutched at her chest, her breath catching in her throat. Julia, who had been watching me intently, slowly pushed back her chair and stood, her eyes meeting mine. A silent, powerful acknowledgement. Chaos erupted. Ivy, 53, recovered from her initial shock, her face contorting into a mask of rage. "This is outrageous, Cassandra! You can't do this! This is Matthew's house! It's our family home!" She pointed a trembling finger at the deed. "This must be some kind of trick!" Sadie, 25, jumped in, her voice shrill. "You're trying to steal the house, aren't you? Just like you tried to steal Matthew's money, you manipulative witch." I stood my ground, the silence from Julia, 31, a solid wall of support behind me. Cody, 23, looked utterly bewildered, caught between the warring factions. "Cassie, what's going on?" he stammered. "What's going on, Cody?" I said, my voice steady and cold. "Is that for 7 years I paid every single cent of this mortgage, while Ivy and Sadie called me lazy, while you all enjoyed a roof over your heads that I was sacrificing everything to keep there." I pulled out a thick folder from my bag. "Here are the bank statements, every single payment meticulously documented. Here are the ledgers I kept. Here are the receipts for Matthew's bills, paid on time, always with her knowledge, never a cent missing." I laid the evidence on the table, a damning pile of paper. Ivy snatched a statement, her eyes scanning the figures, her face paling further. Sadie grabbed another, her accusations dying in her throat as she saw my name on every transaction. "I even have the refusal letter from the bank, Sadie," I continued, my gaze locking onto hers. "The one where you tried to get a loan using my house as collateral, and they told you weren't an owner. Remember that?" Sadie flushed scarlet, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Her lies, her carefully constructed narrative, were unraveling before everyone's eyes. Uncle Gilbert, 56, who had been quietly examining the documents, finally looked up, his face etched with a mixture of shock and dawning understanding. "Ivy, is this true? Cassandra paid all this?" His voice was quiet, but it held a rare note of steel. Ivy looked at him, then at me, then at the undeniable proof. Her usual bluster failed her. She just shook her head, a defeated look in her eyes. "You said you wanted me to do the right thing," I said, my voice rising slightly, cutting through the stunned silence. "The right thing was to pay off this debt, to save this house from foreclosure, which it was heading for before I stepped in. The right thing was to work 2 jobs, to put my life on hold, to ensure Matthew had a home." Cody finally spoke up, his voice choked with emotion. "Cassie, I'm so sorry. I believed you. I was scared to say anything." He looked genuinely heartbroken, and for a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of something akin to pity. "It's too late for apologies," I told him, my voice flat. "This house is legally mine, and I'm serving eviction notices." Ivy stumbled back, clutching her chest again. You wouldn't dare! After everything, you wouldn't dare do this to your own family. I met her gaze, cold and unyielding. No, I said, the words slow and deliberate. I just finally matched your energy. The eviction notices were served a few days later. It wasn't a pleasant process, but I followed every legal step, ensuring there were no loopholes for them to exploit. Ivy, 53, and Sadie, 25, tried every tactic, begging, threatening, trying to guilt-trip me with Matthew, 60. But my resolve, forged in years of silent sacrifice and recent betrayal, held firm. Uncle Gilbert, 56, surprisingly, didn't fight it. He packed his bags quietly, his shame evident. He even offered a mumbled apology before he left, something about not seeing what was right in front of him. Ivy and Sadie moved in with a distant relative, their departure marked by a dramatic scene of wailing and accusations that I simply watched from the porch. Cody, 23, couldn't bring himself to leave with them. He found a place to stay with some friends, promising to visit, a silent acknowledgement of the chasm that had opened between us and the rest of the family. The house was finally mine, truly mine. The silence that settled after they left was profound, almost deafening. It was a peace I had craved for so long, a quiet that allowed me to breathe for the first time in years. Julia, 31, was the first to bridge the gap. She called, then visited, bringing a casserole and a long-overdue apology for her skepticism. I should have known, Cassie, she'd said, her eyes filled with regret. After so many years of their drama, it was hard to see clearly. We talked for hours, slowly, carefully, beginning to mend the years of damage and distance. Our relationship wouldn't be the same, not immediately, but there was a foundation there, a hope for something real. I spent the next few weeks slowly moving my few belongings from Hamza's apartment, 38, into the house. He'd been an unwavering support, a true friend when I had none. The house, once a source of endless obligation, now felt like a blank canvas. I could paint the walls any color I wanted, arrange the furniture however I pleased, without a single critical comment or dismissive glance. The victory was sweet, a cold, satisfying triumph. But it was also isolating. Letters and messages started to trickle in from other relatives, Sawyer, Heidi, people I barely knew, filled with a mix of curiosity, feigned regret, and thinly veiled attempts to get back into my good graces. I ignored them all. They hadn't been there for the years of toil, for the accusations, for the eviction. They wouldn't be here for the peace. Karma, I realized, didn't always come with apologies or grand gestures. Sometimes it came in silence, in the quiet reclaiming of what was rightfully yours. And that, for now, was enough. I carried the last box of my things into the living room, a small box filled with books and a few old photos. I set it down, looking around the empty, sunlit space. The house was finally free of their toxic energy, and so was I. A new chapter, truly my own, was finally beginning.